Well, all right, all right, all right. Happy Friday, guys. Happy St. Patty's Day. If you're tuning in on the live, I am so excited today, not because it's St. Patrick's Day, but because we're going to be talking about a topic that I've never fully talked about, at least not with a guest of this nature. You have heard me interview different people here on Healthy and Wealthy and Wise, especially my spiritual mentor, Franco Romero, who is a divine channel, who has been talking about this ascension process on the planet right now that's happening for all of us here on planet Earth, whether you realize it or not. We're going to unpack that today, what that might look like for you. I know we've got a bit of an audience here, so I first want to acknowledge all of you tuning in on the live. If you've never done this before, this is how we play. I want you to feel like you're a live studio audience. I want you to feel seen and heard and acknowledged. So go ahead and comment below #live. If you're tuning in live, let us know where you're tuning in from. If you're from whatever city, state, country, if you're a starseed, if you know your starseed family, where you hail from, feel free to type that down too. If you're on the replay, #replay and where you're tuning in from. So as you guys know, my passion is helping you be inspired, educated, empowered. Inspired is in spirit. Empowered is empowering you to live your best life with your best health, your best wealth, whatever that means for you, best relationships, by going inward, really, and trusting that divine wisdom that we all have within. However, personally, I believe the past few thousand years, we've been taught to look outside ourselves for the answers. And so today's guest, Katlin Aubrey, is going to be helping us with this. And before I introduce you, Katlin, I want to acknowledge electrical code professor live in St. Pete and Christy live from Florida. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will offer up just a couple more things for you guys to think about. If you want to share, sharing is caring. If you see value, invite some of your friends right now, or when you're done with the show, when we're complete, we'll go about 30 to 45 minutes. Feel free to share it with people you know who might be struggling with ascension symptoms. And if you don't know what I mean by that, you will. And probably about halfway through, we will ask for you guys to share some questions. All right, Nicole. Yay, Nicole Hoover in the house from Minnesota. Yeah, sure, you betcha. And Renee, welcome. Thank you, guys. I love the penguin. So I actually met Katlin on Instagram. And so we haven't physically met. She's a psychic channel and ascension mentor. And what does that mean? So if you don't know what that means, here's what it is. She's a bridge. She bridges the gap between this realm, this world, this 3D world, as you're going to maybe hear us talk about, and the spiritual realm. And honestly, the spiritual realm isn't just someplace out there up in heaven, guys. It's also within, and you have a divine connection. We all do. And so Katlin is a channel. We may actually hear from some beings that may want to come through and share some information today. So Katlin, I'd love for you to share a little bit about you, your story, and how you got to be this psychic channel and ascension mentor.
So hi y'all, my name is Katlin. I am a psychic channel and ascension mentor. So how I really got here was, to an extent, I basically did go to college. I did complete my degree, and to an extent, I have been psychic all of my life. It was just a bit, to an extent, traumatizing when I was a little child. And so to an extent, through doing the inner work, through really bringing power back into myself, through healing that inner child aspect of myself, I was able to regain all of these, to an extent, aspects of myself. And through that, I basically decided to create a psychic business out of it. Yeah. Oh,
I just realized that was me. Sorry. I was muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was something on my end.
Nope, it was me. Technology. This is real. This is live, guys. That's why I love doing it live. So what I was saying was that's what I loved about your posts on Instagram. And we'll make sure I share your handle on Instagram so people can find you. But you were just posting real, raw, authentic posts about the inner child healing. And then also about Ascension symptoms. So there's a lot that you shared that I do want to unpack, but I know I've been talking about Ascension symptoms all week. So I would love for you to define what are Ascension symptoms and why are they happening for us now?
Okay, so overall Ascension symptoms are the overall raising the consciousness of the body, and to an extent where Ascension symptoms primarily stem from and are created is when we are to an extent raising our frequency. And as we are raising our frequency can also become imbalanced because sometimes there can be more of one frequency other than another that are being brought up. And so, within the idea of ascension, what we are going through is this overall shift within our reality, within our frequency. And this is happening on both an individual and a collective level. And so, as we are raising our frequency, that is kind of moving into the fifth dimensional frequency, which is can be a bit of a shock on our bodies because our bodies are 3D and fairly physical, but we are bringing our bodies into the fifth dimension. This isn't necessarily something that we are only going to leave. We're still going to have a sense of physicality. It's just going to be shifted.
I love that. Yeah. And I know this is the first time I've ever openly talked about this on my podcast, Caitlin. So would you mind unpacking and explaining 3D? I don't know if you'd want to talk about 4D, but definitely 5D. What does that mean kind of in like layman's terms for the audience?
So the third dimension is basically our physical reality. And so the physical reality at its core. So the physicality does shift as we move higher and higher. But in the overall 3D aspect, there's a lot of density. There is a lot of overall being. One moment. Yes, within the third dimension, there is a lot of physicality within that aspect. To an extent, within the third dimension, it is very weighted, it's very physical. To an extent, it is to an extent known as a beginner's realm. It is overall a realm of shifting. One cannot entirely reside within the 3D realm within all of their life, as to an extent, it is moving forward from that space. It is where you are to an extent initially coming into this life, what this life is to an extent within this idea of the physical realm. It is physicality, and thus, as such, the energy is very physical, it's very weighted. Moving up into the idea of the fourth dimension is where this kind of physicality breaks free. This is where the energy becomes less physical, more along the lines of moving into the fifth dimension. The fifth dimension is where this physicality starts to release. The physicality starts to shift. It does not entirely overall move out of the overall physical aspect. It just removes the, to an extent, third and fourth dimensional aspects of it, if that makes sense.
Awesome. And just if you guys are just joining us, I know we have a few new people on here. Feel free to comment below, #live. This is Katlin Aubrey. She was just channeling. Can you share with us who is speaking?
Yes. So overall, some of the beings that I work with. So regarding Ascension and Ascension symptoms. So really, beings that I work with. Yes, Pleiadian. So overall, within that idea of removing so I work with them in the aspect of shifting the idea of ascension. But yes, Pleiadian does not necessarily have a name, as to an extent. Yes, not necessarily having a name, as to an extent does not foresee needing one. Okay, so basically, it's more of a 3D aspect, I guess. 4 names is what, yes.
That's perfect. No worries. I just want to give a shout out to Leah joining us here live. Thank you, Leah. So what we're doing today is and some of you might be like, what is going on? Because I've never had this kind of experience on my show. I will remind you guys, I did interview Alexander Quinn in September. Big interview. He's a top 10 New Age spiritual author. He wrote the book on starseeds. So the Pleiadians are galactic beings that she's channeling and talking about the ascension and how she being the bridge to bridge the gap from we'll just say galactics. Caitlin, can I say that? Is that an appropriate term? Okay, so they're helping us ascend as a planet into this fifth dimensional realm. Some people call it New Earth, some people call it Bliss Gaia. It's just a big fancy words for saying the world is evolving and changing. I like to call it Age of Aquarius because we are heading into a new zodiac sign. And why is this important? Well, this impacts your health. This impacts your financial evolution. This will impact your relationships. There's different ascension symptoms. I'll name some, and then Caitlin, I want you to kind of take over and explain the why behind some of these. But I talked about them on my latest episodes too. Everything from you feel like you're going crazy or bipolar, high roller coaster, ups and downs. You may be arguing more with your spouse or your partners. People are breaking up. Both business relationships, partnerships of all kinds, friendships. You may not be feeling as called to do things that you used to love to do. Maybe you feel lethargic. Maybe you feel fatigue. Maybe you're either sleeping really deep. That's mostly me. Where my husband is like not sleeping much, right? He gets up every night in the middle of the night and he's communicating with these divine beings who are wanting to help us heal, ascend, shift, change. I heard a friend yesterday saying now he can't all of a sudden eat dairy. And there's more where that came from, but why is this happening for us right now? All of these symptoms, and maybe explain a little bit more about what your perspective is.
Okay, so overall within ascension symptoms in general, and ascension symptoms don't necessarily need to be just experienced by individuals who are ascending, like intuitively, like going forward on the ascension path. Like many individuals are experiencing ascension symptoms because to an extent it's happening on a collective and individual level within that idea. And so energies are coming in and we are absorbing them. And at the same time, our bodies also need to kind of keep up. And so, where ascension symptoms come in is where this imbalance within our energetic body occurs. And so, yes, all of these frequencies are coming in and upgrading us, but at the same time, on a physical level, we are also experiencing a bit of ungroundedness because it's also taking us out of our bodies, if that makes sense.
Yes, and that's one of the symptoms that my husband, especially, and myself to a smaller extent, have experiencing. Where it's definitely like out of body. We don't feel our normal selves, and externally, a lot of systems are breaking apart. There's more as the light comes in. Would you agree? There's also more unsettled things around money, around health. More people are dying. There's just a lot of unexpected illness and dis-ease that people are experiencing, maybe to even keep it simpler, because that's everyday life. Those are also part of the ascension process, right?
Yes. So as all of this light is coming in to an extent, some of the darker frequencies, such as money, to an extent, money is a lower vibrational frequency as it is tied to the 3D realm. So within that idea, so all of this light is coming in, and at the same time, our overall. So when I say darkness, I mean kind of that 3D aspect, that physicality aspect of ourselves. So that light is coming in and it's kind of pushing all of that physicality and all of that density and all of that darkness to the side. And so that's why there's such as loss of the money, to an extent, bodily ailments, or even the opposite, like what you were saying with individuals now being able to eat things or do things that they couldn't before, it's also causing that kind of imbalance. So it's also, in a way, removing that aspect of the self, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would 100% agree. I was 2 years ago. If you haven't heard my story, guys, 2 years ago, I was a binge drinking workaholic, really focused on money. And then I got all this money. I was making 20 to 40 grand a month, and I was still dead inside. So that was a sign that I was like, something's different. Something's not right. And what I discovered, Caitlin, and maybe this is let's talk about the healing components. That again, all of this is coming up for us to help us wake up and ascend and heal those mother wounds, those father wounds, those inner child wounds, those money wounds, also known, I like to call it not enough, not worthy, or scarcity or lack wounds. Maybe in your own terms, explain how we can start to heal these vibrational energies that are coming up as the light comes in. Those energies are coming up, right? You would say that would be, it's kind of like the yin and the yang. We've got to get them out and purge them in order to move through them and be on the other side of it, right?
Yes. So overall, within the idea of ascension symptoms, it's also related to our overall own trapped frequency. So if we are not entirely, if we're kind of clutching onto our own trauma, our own ancestral trauma, our own trauma in that way, then to an extent that also creates the idea of imbalance, because to an extent it's not allowing entirely for release. And at the same time, there can be resistance within the body to releasing such trauma. And from that, to an extent, that's another main way of ascension symptoms or chronic ascension symptoms occurring.
And I know when I saw your post about inner child healing, and you have a beautiful masterclass. We'll talk about this later at the end of the show, guys. Caitlin, if you're just joining us too, I just want to acknowledge, if you want to follow Caitlin on Instagram, I'll be sharing her handle here before the end of the show. But I purchased her masterclass, and within that, there was an inner child soul retrieval healing. Can you maybe explain why you created that and why that's helpful for people now in this universal shift?
So overall, within the idea of trauma, so trauma at its core is something that occurred within childhood. So to an extent, when we first experienced that trauma, we basically kind of shattered. We left a piece of ourselves back at that trauma, because that trauma was, thank you, was overall not entirely healed at that space. And so that fragment's still there, but we're living our life, but there's still something that's over here. It was left. And so we are going to keep re-experiencing that and re-experiencing that and re-experiencing that throughout our life until this aspect of the self is healed. And so what within the inner child retrieval practice, it's taking that aspect of yourself, healing it, and bringing it back to the present moment. So yeah.
Beautiful. I love it. Yeah, because I've coached on this a lot this past year, sharing my own healing path. And I believe it was the ascension stuff that was helping. The light that was coming in was saying, hey, Lois, it's time to heal this not enough wound, this lack, this scarcity. And as just to kind of bring it home for all you guys, all of this healing that I chose to do, because you can either choose to heal, or if you don't, and I experienced this as well when I was fighting the ascension symptoms, Caitlin, if I didn't want to feel it, I would go numb myself out with social media or alcohol or just busyness, right? So I chose finally, to create spaciousness for myself, to take a look at what was coming up. And only then could I stop the cycle. Only then could I release myself and free myself and reconnect and retrieve back those parts of myself that I lost in those inner child traumas. So I just wanted to help you guys understand, like, this is a lot to take in. And if you have questions, please comment below and ask those questions. This is a great time. We'll probably go about another 15-20 minutes. So if you have questions for Katlin or myself, and you can also find Katlin on Instagram as sprinkle_of_spirituality. If you'd like to follow and learn more about her and seeing her posts. But let's say we've talked about this a little bit, as I started healing those inner child traumas, there was also ancestral stuff that came up that wasn't even mine. It was from my ancestors. And I know you love talking about this. So what are our ancestors calling us to do now with all of the ascension that's happening?
So within the idea of ancestors, it's kind of similar to leaving the aspect over here. So when we pass on, sometimes we have this idea of unfinished business. So within the unfinished business, we might have regrets, we might have traumas that we experienced ourselves in life that we're latching on so hard to that we can't release ourselves, because to an extent within the idea of death, sometimes a loop can occur where it's kind of a trauma, and keep re-experiencing that trauma without any way out. And so to an extent, moving into ancestral trauma, it's kind of bringing that back into the mind space to release that trauma. And so if it's, well, basically to an extent within ancestral trauma, that lineage is also tied to us. And so most of the time, our inner child traumas are also aspects of ancestral trauma, because that cycle keeps going. And so then it's for the next person, the next person, the next person to release, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. And my husband and I just did a webinar on that yesterday, sharing what it's also done for us. And I'd love for you to speak on this too. And you've lived it. You said you had a lot of childhood trauma, or maybe shame, fear, maybe even guilt about your psychic abilities and your gifts. And this ascension process, this age of Aquarius process over the next couple of years, guys, we're in the age of Aquarius now, depending on what you believe and who you listen to. And it's causing our psychic abilities to come online. And yet we can't tap into them, right, Katlin, unless we've done the work, unless we've released some of the trauma, both in this body as children and as our ancestors, the stuff that we've carried from both sides of our parents' lineages, right?
Yes. So to an extent, so within the idea of psychic abilities, so everyone has different overall variants within their body. And so to an extent, yes, to get them at a level and open state is within the idea of releasing those past traumas, releasing all of that gunk that's trapped within our body. And so sometimes individuals can experience those psychic abilities, but to an extent, it's framed as an idea of ascension symptoms, because those traumas are wreaking havoc, and as such, those abilities are kind of really not level, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And it can feel very destabilizing as they're coming in, right? That's also part of the ascension symptoms. They're trying to get our attention to slow down, go inward, guys. I just heard of another friend who just sprained her ankle, and she was like, oh my gosh, one thing after another, after another. Well, if this is happening for you, I'm just here to say, don't shoot the messenger, but it's a sign that you've got to go inward. You've got to slow down. You've got to pay attention, because until I slow down, and trust me, I'm still on this journey with you guys. I'm still working through some ancestral feast or famine type money stuff, right? And to be able to get here, I had to work 2 years. And we don't want you to have to take that much time. I know I saw, Katlin, one of your posts was really profound. It was like, it doesn't have to be hard. you don't have to live with us. And you had your own journey last year too, right? That's also why you created your masterclass, because you were kind of like trying to figure it out also on your own, all of this stuff that was happening for you.
Yeah, y'all, I was in the thick of it last year. So basically, the beginning of last year, I was experiencing all of these ascension symptoms, all of these bodily ailments. And to an extent, it was overall like I did not feel good. And so, to an extent, my overall psychic abilities were like really going a bit crazy, and I was very ungrounded. And so I was experiencing all of these ascension symptoms, but at the same time, I didn't necessarily know how to put what I was experiencing. And so finally, like asking my guides and beings that I work with, it's basically the energetic imbalance within the body. And so, really working towards getting to the root of my traumas, getting to the root of everything that I've really experienced, and healing those aspects of myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love it. I just got this message, Caitlin. I think I'm gonna include your Ascension Symptoms Masterclass with all of my paid clients and subscribers, because I feel like this is so important. You know, if you guys feel like you're a light worker, if you're here for more, if you're here to be of service, if you feel called to a really higher purpose and passion, you really want to just help people, it's very likely that you're going to be going through these symptoms. And I went to regular doctors. I tried psychotherapy, grief counseling, all of the things, and it didn't work for me. Not making light of them or saying they're bad or anything like that, but for me, it was breath work. Kundalini yoga, which helps with alignment of the chakras and grounding into my central nervous system, the really, really yummy, juicy grounding that comes from Mother Gaia, and the light that's coming in. We got to be able to ground it into our bodies. And I know you talk a lot about chakras. Let's talk about chakras really just briefly. Why are those important as we go through this ascension process?
So, as we go through this ascension process, it's important to really look at the chakras or energy centers, really the points on your body that there are pulling energy. Really, whatever you want to call it, there can be gunk that gets trapped in there, and so it's kind of like a river. So, when there is gunk trapped in the river is not really going to flow, and so there's trauma trapped there. There's overall imbalances trapped there. There's resistance trapped there. And so, to an extent, that is also where, to an extent, this idea of psychic abilities can, to an extent, occur, because most of the time, not necessarily all of the time, but a lot of the most of the time, so our third eye and our crown are open, but all of the rest of our body are not entirely healed. And so it becomes a bit of an energetic imbalance. And that is also what kind of creates the idea of ungroundedness, if that makes sense.
100%. Yeah, I learned that through Kundalini yoga first, on how my root chakra, oh my gosh, it was so blocked. My sacral, which is your creativity center, guys. So if you're also feeling lackadaisical, lazy, all of that kind of stuff, there's a lot of sexual trauma, shame, just anything that can block that. And then, of course, the solar plexus, that's your power center. And then for me, I had manifested years ago, Caitlin, an autoimmune disease in my throat. So obviously that was a blockage of my ability to be seen, be heard, to speak my truth. That was one of the biggest messages that I got from my divine guides, was it was time for me to no longer be afraid. And so once I started doing Kundalini yoga, that really helped me with that. What else do you recommend for chakra clearing, besides, of course, what you said already, inner child healing, working through the resistance, because what we resist persists and hold us back? Any other tips on that?
So, to an extent, So yes, so one of the main ways that I do really tell my clients is this idea of inner child healing, but at the same time, also really to an extent setting your intention for each of your chakras. So if you really want to go deep with it, really going into each of those chakras with intention and state, I release all trauma, all stuck energy trapped in, say, root chakra. I allow it to flow out and bring in neutral frequency back into that chakra. So just third eye, crown, throat, so on and so forth, really leveling out that frequency of neutrality within each of those energetic spaces.
That's beautiful. I love it. I love it. I wanted to talk, and just a reminder, guys, we're going to go probably another 10 minutes. So if you have questions, please comment below. We have a great audience here today. I would love for you to get the advantage of being here as our live studio audience to ask Katlin or myself questions about the Ascension, about ancestral healing, inner child healing, chakras. I know one of the other things that I had mentioned to you and saw one of your posts about was part of these psychic gifts. They have names like clairaudience, clairsentience, clairvoyance, all of the clairs. Can you speak a little bit about those and maybe signs that someone has one or the other?
So, with to an extent, something such as clairaudience. So that is very rooted in hearing. That's when, to an extent, your third eye and crown are primarily open. Third eye, because it is to an extent connected to the ears. Third eye is also connected to that openness of the crown chakra. And so, one of the main ways that you would really note the presence of clairaudience in your life would be that to an extent hearing things. It could be hearing voices, it could be hearing ringing, it could feel like I think it's kind of like you have water in your ears.
I've had that. Oh my gosh. I removed 5 pounds of wax from my ear too this past year. It was hysterical, but and then more ringing happened after I did that. So carry on. Carry on. Yeah.
Yes, also an overabundance of wax, an overabundance of that aspect, and to an extent within the third eye, and to an extent that seeing within that clairvoyance, within clear knowing, you could also experience this idea of seeing things before they happen. And sometimes what's really interesting with that is that most of the time it comes through as yourself experiencing everything, but you're actually tapping into differing timelines. And so, really seeing different beings, seeing energies, and seeing timelines. And then, to an extent, within the overall idea of clear seeing, being able to clearly see things around you, that would be primarily tied with this idea of seeing beings, seeing energies, and yes, yes. Oh, pardon. Also, the sense of touch. To an extent, you can be particularly. One moment. Yes, and this idea of sense of touch, one can overall be aware and aware of the overall presence of beings. That could be the overall feeling of the wind, that could be the feeling of tingles, and to an extent, feeling the presence of other beings, if that makes sense.
Yeah, in some ways, it's almost like the sixth sense. It's also like my husband, he now can see and speak and hear, ghosts, people who've passed on or who are wanting help from him to pass on. That was one of his gifts that came online this past year that he never saw coming. And it was all because he decided to do the work, to slow down, to listen, to heal, to release. That's all beautiful stuff. Well, this has been so amazing. Why don't you talk a little bit about your course? We don't have any questions from the audience. And guys, one more reminder, if you feel there is value in today's session, please hit the share button, share the YouTube link, or if you're on LinkedIn or if you're in the Facebook community, we welcome you to share this so more people can be aware of what's happening so they don't think they're going crazy. So they are not going to the doctor running up doctor bills when maybe the doctor can't help them at this point in time, because it's really got to run its course. Right, Caitlin? Caitlin, what do you say?
Yes. So definitely within that that idea of running its course, it definitely has to really hit home, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and why did you create your masterclass? And tell us a little bit more about it. And then, guys, I'm going to be posting that in the show notes. Depending on where you're at right now, I am going to put it in the comments. It doesn't show up everywhere, though, so you'll want to tune in and get the recording in the show notes. But talk about your masterclass.
So my masterclass, really, what my goal is within this masterclass, it is to teach you to master your own ascension symptoms rather than seeking out elsewhere. So really teaching you how to master the frequencies in your body, teaching you how to release your trauma to master those frequencies within your body. And within that, I really, ascension symptoms can be very difficult, and oftentimes these symptoms can become to an extent chronic because there is a bit of an imbalance and we don't necessarily know how to balance our own frequencies within our body. And so my course's goal is really to help you master your own frequencies, heal your own body without needing to seek outward. It's all you. You can do it yourself.
Mhm. I love that. I love that. Yeah. And during this time, guys, you want to align yourself and have encouragement along the way. This can't be done alone. It just can't. I mean, I have, as you guys know, a huge heart for mental health and suicide awareness. I had another friend commit suicide last month, and I just know that mental health crises is on the rise, suicide is on the rise, of all ages, and we just want to build this awareness so that people know that there is hope, there is help, and you don't have to do this alone. We have a question from Leah. So let me throw this up here. How would you say one can deal with fear of not being able to finish all of the healing in this lifetime? Funny, but I started to develop anxiety due to this fear. That's a great question, Leah.
So overall, how would you say one can deal with fear of not being able to finish all of the healing in this lifetime? So to an extent, overall, I'm going to discuss something called the Akashic Records within this. And so Akashic Records are basically layouts of your entire life over all of your lifetimes, over all of these timelines that you are experiencing. And so, to an extent, within the idea of experiencing everything that you're going to, and to an extent, need to experience in life, within releasing all of the traumas that you did within life, to an extent, it is the internal knowing that you are really getting in there. You are really doing the work for yourself. And so it's in that way, and it can sound a little bit odd, but this idea of trusting within yourself, trusting within this idea of guides. And so just like to an extent within that idea of trust, that you are doing everything that you can, you have put in your overall, you have put in your energy in that. And so to an extent, this idea of trust, like I know it does sound a little bit odd because you are putting your trust into something that is not entirely able to be fully conceptualized sometimes. But to an extent, this is a lifetime of release. Every lifetime you release. And so to an extent, we are shifting into this idea of a different space. And to an extent, for many of us, we are releasing a lot of our overall traumas. And so for many, there is a bit of, yes, an ending of that timeline. And so we get to choose whether we stay here or not. That is our choice because we are our higher self. And so we get to choose if we come back in the next life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in, guys, too. So I hope you guys watch this again. Do you have a little more time, Caitlin? If anybody else has a question, we can throw that back out there. It's a lot. I'll probably have you back on for another show, and I'd love to include you inside of my subscription because there's got to be more awareness about this topic. I'm curious. I've asked you this privately, but how long do ascension symptoms last on average? Do you see or feel, have an intuition on that from your guides? And is there like an end point of this in this lifetime? Since we're ascending into 5D, I mean, this has never happened before, at least not as the planet Earth.
So overall, within the idea of the 3D to 5D shift, the 3D to 5D shift is overall a prophetic timeline. And so prophetic timelines do not have ending points. They have thresholds. So the threshold being met to surpass the 3D realm, the threshold being met to overall surpass the fourth dimension. And so within those thresholds, there is no overall timeline for those thresholds to occur. It occurs on an individual and collective level.
Beautiful. Yeah. And some of the people and I know you follow a girl in the universe also on Instagram, and she's talking about like anytime now we're going to have this massive shift. And there's about 150,000 people who are like leading the charge, and it's going to be happening for probably quite a while for the collective. So that's why we want to bring this to your guys' awareness. There is no crystal ball or like she said, no ending point. I like what you said about threshold. And I just want to say to you, Leah, too, I see you, sense of urgency. Well, that's an ascension symptom. Wouldn't you agree, Caitlin? We have this sense of urgency. We want to go home to New Earth. We just have this, I want to cleanse and purge. And that's also a part of the 3D, right? We get impatient. But just really, I think working with your guides, healing through this stuff, sign up and purchase Caitlin's masterclass. She's giving us a discount, guys, and it's very affordable. So you can reach out to her on Instagram as well and connect with her for more support. And I'll just give a shout out. And then I have one more question for you, Caitlin, as we wrap it up. Don't forget, I'm actually gonna, with your permission, I'm gonna add your masterclass to my resources page, Caitlin, if that's okay. I also have free tools galore, classes on ancestral healing, as well as my spaciousness meditation. I also have my Healthy and Wealthy and Wise subscription there, guys, because no one succeeds alone, especially now. And you've got to find the right tribe for you. And mine may not be for you, but I've made a very, very, very low level subscription for Healthy and Wealthy and Wise. My vision is to create a community of like-minded people who are ascending together and who want their best health, who want their best wealth. And it's only $97 a month. And I'm really wanting to grow that here in 2023 to help us all move in as best we can to this age of Aquarius, this threshold, this transition time with as much ease, grace, self-love, self-compassion. I know patience has been a virtue for me lately, and I can do it without people like Caitlin out there and people who are part of my community to help you get through this with breath work, Kundalini yoga, meditation practice is so critical, helping work through and develop your psychic gifts and abilities in a safe container. So reach out to me if you have questions. Again, go to my resources page at loiscoffey.com/resources. resources, or even email me at lois@loiscoffee.com. Would be very, very happy to support you guys. And I'll have your masterclass in the show notes, so you guys please consider purchasing that if you've been experiencing any of those feelings, emotions, scary situations in life, overwhelming situations. We would really want to have you have that kind of support. Any last words, Caitlin, before I ask you my final question?
So ascension happens within. So to an extent, it begins on the individual level, and then it begins to shift onto the collective level. In the now moment, the third and fourth dimensions are to an extent being absorbed by the fifth. So to an extent within that aspect, we are keeping our physicality as we ascend. We are keeping our physical meat suits. So to an extent, there will be this idea of overlapping within the physical and spiritual realms. But to an extent, our physicality is just going to shift.
I love that. Yeah, because we didn't even mention this, and I don't even usually like to say this word, but some people think it's the apocalypse, it's the end times, it's this, it's that, and it's actually very exciting. It's very positive. It's just it's not the end of the world. It's the end of the world as we know it, and we just got to be able to heal, do the shadow work, the inner child work that we talked about, cleanse and clear the chakras, take care of your body, nourish yourself, slow down, get into a spacious space as often as you can, ground yourself, however that looks like for you in nature. And then you'll have your best health, your best wealth, and trusting your own inner divine wisdom. So Caitlin, thank you so much for being here today. My big question that I like to close every show with is, when you hear the phrase healthy and wealthy and wise, Caitlin, what does it mean for you?
So healthy and wealthy and wise. It basically means for me, so you are basically integrating all of those aspects. So your physical body is healthy, your mind is wise, and to an extent you are abundant in all frequencies. You are wealthy in all frequencies, if that makes sense.
I love it. I love it. And besides Instagram, which I'll put your handle and your link into the show notes, is there any other place you want to tell people to find you? Any other spots?
Yes. So TikTok, sprinkle_of_spirituality, the same as Instagram.
Awesome. Beautiful. And I have that up on the slide screen right now. I'll put that in the show notes as well. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you saw value in today's show, please hit the share button. If you have any questions, please reach out to Caitlin or myself. And we will be looking forward to seeing you guys. Happy spring equinox. Happy new moon. This next week's going to be pretty wild and exciting. And so I look forward to giving you guys more monologues, opening up my channel more to be able to share with you more of what I'm getting and receiving and downloads as we move through this exciting time. So thank you, Caitlin. Thank you, everybody tuning in. Here's to your best health, your best wealth, and your best wisdom. Bye-bye for now.